There are thousands of nurse tanks in use by individuals with varying levels of training. It's important to get an up-close and personal look at a typical nurse tank. Mike Machado from Stanislaus Farm Supply gives us a detailed tour of a typical nurse tank.
This is a typical anhydrous ammonia tank, better known as a bullet. You'll see these out at ranches for water running anhydrous ammonia on field crops or trees or whatever. Everything that is on this tank is on every one of our tanks that we have. On this tank on all four sides, you'll see this placard, 1005 placard. This tells that this is a pressurized tank, and the 1005 tells you that it is anhydrous ammonia. It's on all four sides of the tank. Also, inhalation hazard stickers are on the tank, and anhydrous ammonia sticker. Every tank should have the company that owns the tank sign or logo on it telling who owns the tank. Also, emergency phone number down here for 24-hour that you can call if there's an emergency with anhydrous ammonia with this tank. The plate on the tank is basically the birth certificate of the tank. It has a serial number on there that can be tracked back to where the tank was made and the date it was made. The main thing it tells you on that plate is that this tank was made for anhydrous ammonia. On every tank there is a 5-gallon safety water jug. In case you get some of this anhydrous on you or if somebody gets hurt, immediately they can get to water, because water is what you need for anhydrous ammonia. If you get it on you, water, water, water is what you need. Every tank has one. The two red valves are the liquid valves. Not every nurse tank has two liquid valves. Some will only have one, but they will be painted red. The yellow valve is the vapor valve. You have here is the tank pressure gauge. Will tell you how much pressure is in this tank. The gauge flat here on the top of the tank is a percent gauge, a gauge that tells you what the percent is in this tank, and we don't fill these tanks over 85%. The little knob right here on the tank is what's called a bleeder valve. And when you're filling your tank, you open that bleeder valve a little bit, and when the tank gets 85%, it will shoot a fine stream of anhydrous out of there, and you know that your tank is full to 85%. The reason you have these on here is for safety, because if your float or your percent gauge wasn't working, you wouldn't know it. With this thing, you'll never overfill the tank. Over here is a excess pressure valve. We call it the pop-off valve. If this tank ever gets too much pressure in it, this valve will pop off and relieve the pressure off this tank. You notice it has a rubber cap on the top of it. Any tank that has that cap missing is not ready to go down the road. It cannot go down the road. These pop-off valves, whether they've never been used, have to be replaced every 5 years, and they're dated valves. So it doesn't matter if you had it on the shelf for 2 years, you've already lost 2 years of the life for that valve. One thing about these liquid valves and the vapor valves is inside these valves they have what's called an excess flow valve. And when you open these valves, you have to open them very slow. If you open these valves fast, there's an inner valve inside these valves that will shut the tank off right now. So if this tank happened to break a valve off, there's a safety valve inside here to stop it. You know, another thing is the roll cage. The roll cage is up above the valve, so if this tank was ever rolled, these valves would be protected and you couldn't break them off. On these liquid flow valves here, there's dip tubes that go down inside the tank. And they go down inside the tank, and its pressure is what gets the anhydrous ammonia out of this tank. And these pressure pushes the anhydrous to the bottom, and it shoots up them dip tubes and out of the valves. If this tank was rolled over upside down, the dip tubes would now be at the top of the tank, and the pressure's at the top of the tank, so now your vapor valve would be your liquid valve. Normally, in the case of a rollover, we usually won't have any trouble with the valves because of the rollover protection. So normally that's not a big deal with these tanks. The majority of the emergency calls that we get on our anhydrous ammonia tanks is a liquid valve that has been shut off improperly. These liquid valves, when you run them, they freeze up on the outside, And when you shut them down, if you don't make sure you get them shut all the way, there could be ice in there and the anhydrous ammonia will continue to leak out of that valve. Just a minute amount, but looks like a lot. And normally what we'll do is we'll go out there and dump a little bit of water on the stem and just a quarter of a turn or less and it's shut off. That's what we see most of the time.